This was a pretty ambitious project. I listened to the 10 biggest hits from each year in the 2000s to make this. I could have used the Decade End Hot 100 by Billboard, but I did it this way for two reasons. The first is that this gives every year an equal chance. The second is that these are the songs that defined those years. They may not stand the test of time, but if you were there, they were inescapable. This is just my opinion, but this time I made sure to really get a feel for each song and not to choose lightly. Let's look back at the biggest hits of the 2000s and see which ones were the absolute worst.
Gotta get dip. Gotta get dip. Gotta get dip, 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 dip. Gotta get dip. Gotta get dip. Gotta get dip. Gotta get dip.
The early 2000s was the heyday of the post-grunge, the nu metal, the butt rock, all the different ways that a white boy can scream into a microphone. It did serve a purpose at the time, but looking back on it, a lot of it was just kind of embarrassing. I could pick the lowest of low-hanging fruit and talk about Nickelback. I could also call out those one-hit wonder bands with unimpressive lead singers and generic lyrics like Hoobastank or The Calling. But no. Instead, I'm going after the band people actually like.
It starts with one thing. I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try.
I want to make it clear that I do not dislike Linkin Park. I haven't heard too many songs by them, but I truly think that Numb is one of the best songs this subgenre has to offer. That's why In the End is so terrible to me. Everything that Numb got right, this got wrong. First off is the sound. This is the most boring I have ever heard Linkin Park. They made something sweeping, almost operatic with Numb, and even turned up the angst to 11 in Crawling, but here the singer is giving it so little. It's the worst middle ground between his clear, good singing voice and his rough, powerful one. The rapping isn't terrible, but there's this one part that always throws me off.
You were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property. Remember?
I have no idea why that's there. It sounds like an accident that they just didn't notice until it was too late. But what really pushed this song into the top 10 is its lyrics. I originally thought that this song is about existential dread, how no matter what we do, one day it's all going to be over. I could have appreciated that, but this song is actually about something else entirely. If you look at the lyrics, it's really about a breakup. The problem is how there is no weight or emotion put into it at all. It's kind of angry and kind of sad, but the most important lyric of the song negates everything. A Linkin Park song lives or dies on whether or not they can be convincing in their emotion, and this song is not convincing in the least. It can't decide if it wants to be bitter and angry or sad but introspective, so it ends up being neither. In a way, In the End by Linkin Park is the ultimate emo song. It's whining and moaning about something that they acknowledge isn't even really that important. Linkin Park is so much better than this. This is the most useless song I have ever heard from them. So naturally, it's the biggest hit they ever made. Objectively, How You Remind Me by Nickelback is probably worse, but In the End gets on the list because it doesn't have any reason to exist. And that is the worst way a song like this can feel. It's empty, it's weak, and in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Gotta get dip. Gotta get dip. Gotta get dip.
I have heard so much hate being thrown on this song, and I felt that most of it was unwarranted. Even so, I never really had the desire to actually listen to it. But I had to for this, and yeah, I have to agree. This song is terrible.
You done me and you bet I felt it. I tried to beat you, but you're so hot that I melted. I fell right through the cracks.
I remember a tweet that basically said it's easier to think of female serial killers than it is to think of women who show up at parties with acoustic guitars, and that is extremely fitting for I'm Yours. This is the definitive white guy with acoustic guitar song. It sounds like a song some D-bag wrote after learning the 4 chords and wants to play at a party to impress chicks. And it's the parade of everything annoying and obnoxious about that archetype. Jason Mraz says that this song took less than half an hour to write, and oh brother does it show.
I've been spending way too long checking my tongue in the mirror and bending over backwards just to try to see it clearer.
Dude, nobody wants to hear that, especially not in what's supposed to be a love song. I also hate his voice in this. Every inflection, every breath of air that comes out of this guy's mouth is obnoxious. It's like he's constantly trying to top himself for saying words in the dumbest ways possible.
Well, you done me love, 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 love.
He also just fills up space with random nonsense. He even finishes with the worst scat singing I have ever heard in my life. If you don't know what scat is, here's all you need to know. This is what that's supposed to sound like. And this is what we got. And of course, even with songwriting so unfocused, he still found a way to squeeze in a little bit of narcissism. Compare this to Hey There Delilah, another white guy with acoustic guitar song, one that I don't even really like, but it at the very least had some genuine emotion and weight to it. It's distinct. I'm Yours sounds like something anyone could have made. I can imagine somebody not minding this, but I'm hard pressed to imagine somebody actually being impressed. I'm Yours is so horrible because it is a complete and total waste of time. It had nothing put into it. It's flavorless, unimpressive, and hollow to the extreme. And I'm giving it more attention than it deserves, so let's just move on. One of the defining genres of the 2000s is R&B, and I in general just don't really like R&B that much. I'm not even a fan of the smash hits like Yeah or Ignition remix, but I can see the appeal in them. But I hope we can all agree that Akon was just terrible.
I know you see me looking at you and you already know I wanna fuck you. You already know.
Not only was Akon an awful singer, he was a pretty bad producer too. He demonstrates both of those in I Wanna Love You, his biggest hit. The worst Akon songs are really creepy, and while this is not quite as unnerving as Smack That, it's pretty close. First things first, this song has absolutely nothing to do with love. That's just used to make a title somebody can actually read out loud on the radio. He makes his intentions clear. I don't think that this song is rapey, but it's definitely very creepy, what with a twinkly beat and Akon's monotone delivery on the chorus. This isn't sexy, it's just uncomfortable. Also, I might just be too young to get this, but I have no idea what Snoop Dogg did to warrant all the love people have for him. It sure as hell wasn't his guest verses, I can tell you that much. He just comes off as so gross, and the "you can't see me, but I can see you" line brings the creepy undertones right out front. It took 7 years for him to find a song more shameful to be in than this one.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
There are a good number of parallels to draw between I Wanna Love You and Wiggle, but more than anything else it reminds me of Tonight by Enrique Iglesias. That song was a horrible idea, one that never should have seen the light of day, but it's still way better than I Wanna Love You by Akon, for 2 reasons. First off, Tonight is an upbeat dance song with music that you could theoretically appreciate if you ignored the lyrics. I Wanna Love You is as far from that as possible. But more importantly, as questionable as the lyrics in Tonight were, Enrique Iglesias doesn't have the presence or conviction to come off as predatory. Akon does. I have no trouble believing that he thinks these exact things when he goes to a strip club. He slips into the role perfectly. That's what makes this so much worse than other sex jams that would normally just be creepy. It sounds like he actually means it. Completely terrible. This song can love off. One of the most baffling subgenres in pop music is the Steal Your Girl anthem. I hate those songs on principle and have yet to hear one done in an acceptable way. And these songs are disturbingly common in hip-hop and R&B, including the smash hits. I hated them all, but like with all bad things, there is a way to do it particularly horribly. This song had the odds stacked against it from the beginning due to its content, and Fat Joe destroys any chance with his first line.
Slow down, baby. Let you know from the gate, I don't go down, lady.
He keeps going too.
You get me aroused, how you look in my eye. But you talk too much, man, you're ruining my high.
Charming. Anyway, Fat Joe makes it clear that this is entirely about sex, so the chorus of "What's love got to do with it" is kind of a moot point. There's no love to be found. But it's also revealed that Ashanti's character has a boyfriend that she's cheating on with Fat Joe. That makes the chorus even more contradictory. Trust? What trust? There's no trust. Your relationship is built on lies. They picked the worst tone possible for this, treating it like it's a cute, fun little love song when it's really about adultery. The light way Ashanti sings it makes it sound like she doesn't care in the slightest that she's cheating. It's a rare case of a steal your girl song where the girl comes off as just as bad as the guy does. I also know that this is a petty thing to bring up, but I have a hard time believing these two together. Like, at all. It seems that the songwriters realized this too, so they tried to compensate by adding this. Ashanti didn't write any of this, so I can only see that as something they put in to make Ashanti wanting Fat Joe more believable. The pure ego that songs like these require is almost as bad as the glorification of infidelity. What's Love has all the problems Steal Your Girl songs have, but fares even worse because it's trying to trick you into thinking that it's something else. It tries to be all coy about it, but in the grand scheme of things, that just makes it worse. This isn't cute, this isn't fun, it's just awful. I'm really glad that songs like these aren't so common anymore. One of the biggest stars of the 2000s was Alicia Keys. She made her first hit in 2001 with Fallin', which was okay. Her next hit was If I Ain't Got You in 2004, which was a lot better. But then this happened. I find it hard to believe that this song was made by a professional in a studio with other people. This doesn't even sound like it was made by an adult. Apparently, Alicia Keys is really proud of this song, which is shocking to me. This doesn't sound like a lightning in a bottle gem, it sounds like album filler. And nobody sounds less invested than Alicia herself.
You can be so that it will only get better.
Am I mistaken? Isn't she more of a powerhouse vocalist than this?
This girl is on fire.
Actually, Girl on Fire is a great comparison because it's essentially No One, the good version, at least with how it sounds. In Girl on Fire, the vocals and percussion were actually powerful enough to fill up the track. In No One, they're not, so it just sounds thin and empty. None of the musical elements work here. The drum machine beat is terrible and never shuts up until the very end. Because of that, the entire song just sounds plodding and meaningless. The piano is so quiet it barely exists, and I despise that synthetic horn sound. The production is weak, and Alicia Keys sounds even weaker. Normally, a performance like this would be used to show vulnerability, but that's not what they were going for at all. This song is supposed to be proud and sweeping and fails miserably. The repetition makes it even worse. Every time she says No One, it sounds more and more like she's trying to convince herself. And the lyrics are a bland pile of nothing, so basically not a single aspect of this song works. The only part that I like even a little is the outro, but that's too little too late. No One doesn't make me mad in the way some of the other songs on this list do, but there's just so much wrong with it that it had to be here. This doesn't sound like an Alicia Keys song. It sounds like somebody trying and failing to imitate Alicia Keys. Picasso once said something along the lines of, I can make a fake Picasso just like anybody else, and No One is that principle put into motion. Just like male R&B, female R&B was huge in the 2000s. The major player was obviously Beyonce, but there were definitely others, like Ashanti, Alicia Keys, Aaliyah, and other ones whose names probably don't start with the letter A. But if you ask me, nobody added less to the conversation than Ciara. This was her debut single and a horrendous first impression. The most prominently irritating thing about Goodies is its beat. That sound is terrible. I know they were going for it. The beat of this is a lot like the beat in Work It by Missy Elliott, but Goodies doesn't even come close to being as catchy. Even so, when the guitar comes in, the beat is halfway tolerable. P.D. Pablo is actually pretty good here too. In fact, his verses are much better than the song deserves. Still, it was not enough to save it, and I pin the blame entirely on Ciara herself. This is one of the weakest, least compelling, least impactful performances I have ever heard in my life. I don't know many of her other songs, but on this track, she is an absolute vacuum of personality. No matter how much Beyonce can annoy me sometimes, at least she has some presence in a halfway decent singing voice. Ciara doesn't even sound like she's trying. She's barely singing. It's just this awkward whispering that I think is supposed to be sexy, but fails at being sexy in every way. And this chorus is garbage. It features one of my least favorite production elements, one that was disturbingly common in the 2000s, heavy breathing. I'm not even talking about the singer breathing, I mean heavy breathing that was edited in. That is just so creepy, and Ciara makes it so much worse. Like, no, Ciara, I don't want your goodies, leave me alone. You know what this song really reminds me of? Yes, this sounds a lot like Fifi to me. The same emptiness, the same annoying sound, the same terrible performances. The lyrics are also questionable. It's about what a sensual tease Ciara is, but they also take the time to mention how young she is, on more than one occasion. Not only does that have uncomfortable implications, it's also just a lyric that plain won't age well. This song is a bland, stale product that really should have been left in the jar.